The BMW 3 Series has always been a class favorite, all thanks to the fact that the 3 Series represents what the BMW brand is all about. Now in 2023, the 3 Series gets a mid-cycle facelift. But is it still relevant amidst the high demand for crossovers and SUVs? So what you're seeing here in this cloudy and sort of rainy day is this new BMW 3 Series Touring. So yes, for the first time in nearly, or I think 20 years exactly, there's now once again a wagon version of the BMW 3 Series. And for me, being a fan of wagons, I'm really excited to take this car and to show you guys how this car fares against the competition. So if you've seen our review of the pre-facelift 3 Series, which you can pick up here in the top right-hand corner of the screen, you know that we love that car, and I'm pretty sure that will apply here to the facelifted 3 Series. But before we get to the technical and the driving aspect, let's talk about the exterior of the car. So being the facelifted version, you have a revised front end. Thankfully, the grille still traditionally sized. Hindi siya yung kasing laki nung, let's say, sa X7 or the 7 Series. You also have new LED headlights, new bumpers as well, and as you're gonna notice, hindi siya yung M Sport look that you would get in the 318i sedan or the M340i version of the 3 Series Touring. So basically, the look, at least for me, it balances out yung elegance with sportiness, which basically it's traditional BMW in terms of the way the front end looks. And actually, sila to lang the rest of the car. So moving down the sides, you're gonna see a satin silver trim piece surrounding the entire window and a satin silver roof rail being the wagon version, of course. And then, yun nga, being the wagon as well, you have the roof line that extends all the way to the trunk area, which, okay, may ko sa wagons, I'm a fan of wagons, I just said that kanina. So, compared to the sedan, I would really prefer how this car looks immediately because of, talagang, for me, the wagon roofline looks really good compared to the roofline of a sedan. And you also have 18-inch wheels, multi-spoke design, 5 twin spokes in the 318i Sport Sedan and the M340i Touring. Moving towards the back, twin exhaust pipes, genuine actual exhaust pipes by the way, no fakery here. Traditional BMW L-shaped LED taillights, you also have a powered tailgate with the window opening separately as well from the tailgate. One of my favorite features talaga with a European wagon. So basically in terms of aesthetics, the entire 3 Series range, or maybe not the M3 pala rather, the entire 3 Series range still sticks to the traditional aesthetic of a usual BMW. So no giant grille, no weird cut lines in the sides, very sleek, very sporty, very elegant pa rin. So I think it's a good time for us to move inside the 3 Series and compare it to the pre-facelift version as well as some of its competition. So now that we're here inside the new 3 Series, and as you're gonna see, there's a completely new dash design. So a lot of the fundamental shapes and design flourishes are still kept intact from the pre-facelift 3 Series. But the dash has been reshaped in order to accommodate this giant pair of screens. So I think 10.25 inches on the driver and 14 inches, if I'm not mistaken, on the central screen. So this is now iDrive 8. And before we talk about the iDrive 8 part first, let's talk about the overall quality and feel of the interior. So what I like about this interior is typical BMW, it's very solid, door thud test. So as usual, very tank-like yung tunog ng mga door thuds ng BMW. But my favorite aspect here is in terms of the visual part. There's a lot of silver aluminum trims. And this is actually genuine aluminum. Malamig siya to the touch. So alam mo, it's really metal. And there's a huge serving of it, which is a good thing. And not one of those gloss black things that I used to see in the pre-facelift 3 Series. And even the cup holder lid is covered in this aluminum trim, which is really, really nice. I'm loving this interior from a quality and aesthetics perspective. There's only gloss black surrounding the aircon vents, but that's about it. So this is a good interior in terms of the materials used kasi the gloss black is almost pretty much non-existent in the high touch points of the car except lang for the P button sa kanang toggle type gear selector. Now, you also have a sort of burgundy leather upholstery, which is really nice for me. And because it's a darker shade of red, hindi rin siya yung dumihin at the same time. And as usual, BMW sa driving position is really good. Plenty of adjustment with the steering wheel. Huge adjustment talaga, as in huge adjustment for the rake especially. And yun nga lang, wala pang lumbar support itong particular seats na to. You really have to step up pa to the M340i just to have lumbar support. But anyhow, let's now go to the two screens, yung iDrive 8 infotainment system. So, as you've seen in my BMW iX review, the first car to have this system, interface-wise, okay naman siya sa akin. It looks nice, sleek, artistic, I think, and this time around, iDrive 8, I think, is designed more for use through the touchscreen as opposed to the rotary knob controller, which, by the way, is not in the X1 because the X1's iDrive 8 is slightly different. But anyhow, iDrive 8 here in the 3 Series still has the rotary controller, so you can control it through that, which I still prefer, though yun nga lang pansin ko, the menu structure is really skewed more towards using the touchscreen. But guys, you know my frustrations with brands putting the climate controls in the infotainment system, and unfortunately, BMW did the same thing with the 3 Series, and not just the 3 Series, but any car moving forward with iDrive 8. So yeah, you have to dive into the climate menu just to change the temperature, and not the temperature rather, but the fan speed. At least the temperature is readily available all the time, but fan speed, yeah, that's something that you have to do to the touchscreen. Yeah, so it's irritating that car manufacturers are doing this now in order to save then actually from cost, by the way. That's also a cost-saving tactic because it reduces the amount of buttons to program in the car's hardware aspect. So yeah, iDrive 8 is a mixed bag for me in all cars. But yeah, it's a nice interior, a well-built interior, a high-tech one at that as well. And I think it's a good time now to talk about the rear seats of the 318i Touring. So as you're gonna see, in terms of space, the 318i Touring is pretty good for my 5'11" height. The best part, I think, is the headroom because the roof tapers to the dulo ng kanyang trunk, and therefore, you have a very tall roof line here at the rear seats, giving me a lot of headroom for my 5'11" height. Legroom, though, is okay lang, but a lot better than cars like the Lexus IS and the Mercedes-Benz class. Yun nga lang, the middle passenger has to deal with the center tunnel, but it's not too bad. Sakto lang yung size, hindi man siya yung super lapad. So, even if I sit in the middle, there's still foot room for the outer rear passengers. And then as for amenities, you have your usual center armrest with cup holders covered in this case, by the way. And then you have your own climate zone sa likod, your own temperature controls, and 2 USB-C fast charging ports. So yeah, it's a pretty good back seat in terms of space and features. Now we think it's a good time for us to talk about the trunk space of the 318i Touring.
Now as for cargo space, the BMW 3 Series Touring offers 500 liters behind the rear seats. But once those seats have been folded, the cargo volume triples to a van-like 1500 liters. Further driving the point that you don't need an X-Ray or any other luxury crossover SUV if cargo space is your only concern. Now as for the sedan, what you get is 480 liters behind those rear seats. Though yun nga lang, BMW hasn't revealed the cargo space once those rear seats have been folded. Now as for engines, the 318i range gets a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder gasoline engine. Now, if you want more power out of your 3 Series, you can get the M340i, which uses the iconic B58 turbocharged inline 6. A separate review of the M340i is coming out this December, so be sure to be subscribed to Go Flatout PH in order to be notified. In the meantime, how does a standard 318i perform on the road?
So as for the driving experience of the BMW 318i Touring, this car will pretty much drive similarly from the pre-facelift model, and that's no bad thing in a way that it manages to combine sportiness, comfort, refinement, all into one vehicle that is well designed and is able to do all of those aspects really well. So it's one of those cars that are really a true all-rounder. So as we're going to twisty roads here, you're gonna notice that being the Touring or the wagon version, the ride in the rear end of the car feels much more settled, I guess, compared to the sedan version. Partly due to the fact that there's a bit more weight do sa rear end nung 3 Series Touring compared to the sedan. Pero that's not to say that in terms of handling, iba na yung pakiramdam niya. Sa totoo lang, it still feels pretty much the same as the sedan version. The steering is responsive, very precise, very accurate in terms of how it feels. So when you chuck this car through corners, it's gonna feel very responsive and willing to change directions eagerly. So ito lang, chuck this car through corners, and wow, this car goes through corners beautifully. The near 50-50 perfect weight distribution and rear-wheel drive architecture makes this car really balanced, and the car really still pretty much stays secure. Yun nga lang in terms of feedback though, yung kanang steering feel, there's not much anymore in terms of feel, I guess, compared to the older BMWs. Pero it's still pretty good kasi hindi naman siya completely numb. There's still a bit of road feel. You can still tell what's happening to the front wheels, but to a lesser degree na compared to the older models of the BMW lineup. The suspension, as with the pre-facelift 3 Series, so ito lang, there's no mechanical changes to the car, no? So that's the reason why this car still pretty much feels the same as before. There's no suspension, no drivetrain tuning. So in terms of ride, it's on the firm side but not matagtag. Firm side lang. So the result with that is it's dealing with body roll really well. Maganda ang body control niya through the corners. And we're actually going through a bit of rough road. This is not very smooth concrete, but it's still riding reasonably well. Ang pagramdam niya more is, ang result niya is, the ride becomes controlled. I would actually be willing to bet that the M340i would ride better because of its adaptive suspension. But for the most part, the standard suspensions are pretty good. Itong nasa 318i sedan and the touring version that we're driving today. The brakes are also really good. They provide a lot of bite. And talagang even if you bring this car to a lot of mga sunod-sunod na corners, the brakes are still very resistant to brake fade. Also, with German cars as usual, the chassis rigidity is really good. Contributing again to its handling kasi the car won't get unsettled or will be upset when it goes to a corner na may malubak siya or let's say yung hindi smooth. So it's really good and really confidence-inspiring in terms of the handling aspect of the car thanks to the rigid structure. Of course, apart from handling, comfort din ang benefit niyan because there's no vibrations going to the cabin. So it's really just the suspension absorbing the ride. One of my favorite aspects always with German cars and partly why I always critique rigidity of a car sa mga car reviews ko. The engine's also really good. It delivers strong punch, yung kanyang engine. And this engine, by the way, is the 2-liter turbocharged gasoline engine that you would also find in the 320i, 420i, 520i, 530i. Basta yung 20i, 30i yung dulo ng nomenclature or naming scheme nila. It's basically the 2-liter engine that's featuring varying states of tune. So, as a result of that, itong in the 318i at least, it feels, I guess, under-stressed, kung sabihin natin. Because if you've driven the 420i, 520i, you know that this 2-liter can handle a lot more power. And as a result of that, though in terms of the numbers, hindi nga siya impressive. Like parang it's 150 plus horsepower, 200 plus Newton meters of torque. It's just sakto lang in terms of the numbers. But this engine delivers strong performance because the engine has a lot of torque in a wide rev range, and as a result of that, it's a very willing vehicle to overtake sa mga provincial roads, sa mga highways, mga ganyan. And in fact, 0 to 100 kph happens in the mid 8-second range. But as usual with BMW, sabi naman natin that those numbers can be understated. So it's actually far faster and far more powerful than the numbers suggest. And that's basically what the 318i feels. It feels punchy, it feels torquey, whatever the rev range. And combined with the ZF8 speed automatic, alam naman natin na even on my other reviews with the same transmission sa mga other BMWs and other premium cars, itong ZF8 speed is one of the best transmissions in the industry, period. So it's very responsive, very quick-witted, it delivers the right gear all the time. It's a really very good transmission, so totoo lang. So let's take it out on the highway and let's see how the 3 Series performs. So now that we're on the highway and we're now taking the 3 Series here, and as usual with a BMW, syempre maganda pa rin talaga refinement niya. You kinda expect the part na at 100 kph, this car feels more like 50 kph. And those overkill levels of refinement pa rin carry over through the facelifted 3 Series. I guess I hear a bit of wind noise through the mirrors, just like in the pre-facelift 3 Series hanggang ngayon. Pero, I mean, that's pretty much it. In terms of the other noise sources, road, wind, and engine noise, It's a really quiet car. It's very relaxing. It's a car that will eat up a lot of miles effortlessly. Alam niyo naman na the Autobahn doesn't have, or at least most sections of the Autobahn doesn't have a speed limit. And therefore, yung mga German cars have to be designed in such a way na traveling at 200 kph na sustained for long distances ng tuloy-tuloy, dapat ma-handle nila yun. So, bringing German cars here to the Philippines, with sa refinement aspect lalo, it's gonna be really overkill. So, stability, refinement, comfort to a degree rin, the 3 Series is really good. What about fuel economy? Well, being a BMW, of course, kung mapapansin lahat ng mga reviews ko, whether it's a gas-powered BMW or a diesel-powered BMW, they all tend to be fuel efficient, including the GR Supra. Alam naman natin sa BMW Z4, underneath yung katawan ng GR Supra. And even the inline 6 ng Supra was doing 9 kilometers per liter average. So here in the 3 Series, ngayon in the 318i, it's doing 11.8 kilometers per liter on average, which is really, really good. For perspective, yung BMW 530i, which has more power than this car, is also roughly doing the same fuel economy. Actually, mga 10 kilometers per liter. Once double digits ka, even if your car is like yung mga 200 plus horsepower and all, alam mo it's gonna be fuel efficient na at that point. And that's the case with BMW's vehicles. So the M340i, the higher performance version of the standard 3 Series, since that's using the same engine as the GR Supra, that same inline 6, we expect then, or rather I expect na yung fuel economy noon is gonna be around the 8 to 9 km per liter. Then yun nga lang kasi the M340i has X-Drive all-wheel drive, but the GR Supra is lighter, smaller, and rear-wheel drive. So yeah, there's those parts then. Pero yeah, BMW engines are really very fuel efficient. And that's basically the 3 Series for you. It's a car that's able to do a lot of things really well. It's able to do the emotional stuff like fun to drive, sportiness, and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's able to do the pragmatic aspects of driving, such as comfort, refinement, and fuel economy. Not just well, but so to lang really, really good. Kaya it's no wonder na though the 3 Series is their, let's say, compact, luxury sports sedan or wagon, it's somewhat what defines BMW as a brand talaga. Kind of like the Porsche 911, because the 3 Series is like a distillation of what BMW as a brand is really all about.
Pricing for the BMW 3 Series starts at a little under 3.6 million pesos. And that gets the base 318i sedan business. If you want something a bit sportier, you can get a 318i Sport, which gets an M Sport exterior and sportier alloy wheels. This 318i Touring, on the other hand, starts at a little under 3.9 million pesos, which then now leads us to the M340i Touring. For exactly 2 million pesos more, you get that lovely B58 inline 6, bigger 19-inch wheels, M Sport brakes, adaptive suspension, adaptive LED headlights, sportier front seats, and a Harman Kardon surround sound system. Unfortunately, and we say this to most of our BMW reviews, the 3 Series still doesn't get any form of advanced driver assistance features. So no adaptive cruise control, no automatic emergency braking, but you do get the parking assistant self-parking feature. Lack of driver assistance tech aside, the 3 Series continues to be better than ever. So yes, even if SUVs are popular than ever, there's still a time and space for a vehicle like the BMW 3 Series. After all, it's a car that in the end defines the BMW brand.